All right, y'all, now we have our wedge piece of clay. It's time to sit down and start working on our first assignment, which will be a 6-inch cylinder, okay? Before we start throwing, let's talk about setup really quickly. To be successful, slide your chair all the way up to your wheel, sit all the way up so that there's no space between you and the wheel. Make sure the pedal's at a comfortable spot, and make sure you have a relatively clean wheel head, no water on it, okay? Again, remember, we want that convex dome on the bottom of our clay. Okay, don't throw that clay down without that. And then we're just gonna take this clay, we're gonna throw it down at the wheel head right in the middle. Okay? Now if you notice, this clay's kind of rolled up on the sides. And when we go to attach this to the wheel, if we dump a bunch of water on the wheel, it's going to slide underneath there and hydroplane. Okay? So in order to prevent that, we're going to grab a little bit of water just on our finger here and push down slightly. Okay? I don't wanna make a big old gouge in here. I just wanna seal that to the wheel. Everybody see that? Okay. From there, it's time to start the two-step process in order to center this clay, okay? First off, what does it mean to have a center piece of clay? I want this clay to spin perfectly in the middle of the wheel, no lumps and bumps, okay? The two steps I'm gonna use are coning and chopping. Okay, so first off, let's get our hands plenty wet. We need plenty of water to work with. If your clay is ever super tacky, starts to warm up, you're starting to twist your clay off the wheel, you're not using enough water, okay? It's hard to hurt it with the water. So, plenty of water on our hands. Our left elbow, this is the key here to centering. It's gonna go into our hip socket in the front of our body, not on the side, but we're gonna use our hip to push forward, which is gonna allow us to use our body weight to manipulate the clay. So left hip, or left elbow in your hip bone, the palm, the fleshy part of my palm on my left hand is gonna push across the wheel, just like this, okay? My right hand is gonna make a hook, and it's gonna pull back into my lap. So it's a push-pull. As it starts to come together, I'm gonna bring my hands up into a point, to create a cone, okay? I'm not trying to center here. This is part of centering. It's not centering, so it's still lumpy and bumpy. I'm gonna fix that here at the next step. Also, don't cone this up into a foot tall. It's gonna make it really hard to work with. It's doable, but it's a pain in the butt. So just start with a short cone, okay? We're gathering that clay up. Now we're going to do the second step, which is chopping. So two-step process, coning and chopping. Sponge in our right hand, in our hand here with plenty of water, okay? It's gonna grab our left thumb. Where does that left elbow go? It goes right in our hip. And we're gonna go full speed. We coned at full speed as well. And I'm going to use the fleshy part of my palm. So if you follow your pinky all the way down, this blade right here, I'm gonna chop straight down on the clay, okay? I'm gonna grab my thumb, my fleshy part of my palm is gonna push across the wheel just like when I'm coning. And it's gonna go like this. So this is called chopping. I'm gonna add that pressure with my palm. If I need more water, I can squeeze my sponge. And I'm gonna push down. I'm pushing straight down, using my body weight to lean in. Okay, and notice I've started to create a mushroom shape. As soon as I start to create that, I need to start adding pressure from my left hip. So I'm gonna lean in, and I'm pushing with my hips, okay? Do not push your elbow and use your shoulder to push away. It's gonna create an uneven pressure. Use your hip bone to push your arm across the wheel as you lean into the top. Once you feel that clay quit bumping, it goes super smooth, let off extremely slow. Okay, you'll end up with a center piece of clay. That is key though. If we let off too quickly, this is what happens. So I'm adding pressure, I feel like it goes centered, and I let off quickly. I will knock it off center because the clay is spinning, that centrifugal force is thrusting the clay outward, and as I remove that pressure, it fills the void. And so we knocked it off. This might happen to you. If it does, no big deal. We just come back in with our chop and add a little bit of pressure. As soon as we feel it go smooth, we're gonna let off nice and easy, okay? I get asked often, is this centered enough? Now that's not really a question, okay? Is it centered or is it not centered? You can tell if it's centered by putting your hand on it, and if your fingers aren't bouncing around, okay? As opposed to like something like this, doing a hula hoop here, okay? That is centered. If you're struggling, come get me, right? Watch this video a few times. It's probably your hip pressure, okay? Make sure your elbows aren't floating. Just nice, even pressure here and let off nice and easy. And then you have a center piece of clay. All right, good luck, y'all. Keep practicing. All right, now that we have our center piece of clay, it's time to start our 6-inch cylinder, our first assignment in Ceramics 1, okay? We're gonna start with 1.5 pounds. We're gonna get it centered, okay? Go through that video if you're not getting things centered. It's important to get it centered. We want a good foundation in order to have success in this class. So don't skip that step, right? Go back and watch it over and over again. Ask friends for help, ask me for help. Let's get it down, okay? Now, let's go into that 6-inch cylinder. We're gonna use a multi-step process to get there. We are going to enter, we're going to open, we are going to compress the bottom, we are going to pull, and then we are going to clean it up. Okay, so I know it's a lot of steps. We'll go through them all. You can rewatch the video and go through all those, okay? So we're gonna enter. In order to enter, our elbows don't need to be on our hip bones anymore, but they do need to be anchored to our legs, okay? Make a pointer finger with your right hand, turn it on its side like this, okay? Don't have it like this because your finger flexes, it's harder to control. Turn it on its side. Elbows on our legs. My left hand is gonna brace that finger. Just whatever I can do to keep it from wobbling. And I'm gonna push down going full speed, right in the very middle. I'm gonna add a little bit of pressure at a time. Even consistent pressure is key. And as my water starts to dry up, I'm gonna let off easy here, okay? I'm gonna come to my bucket, get a little more water. Don't force it. If your finger starts to drag and flick like this, it means you don't have enough water in there. Go back and get that water. Keep adding pressure. And I'm pushing down, and notice I'm pushing on an angle. I kind of have a V shape here. Now, how far do we go? We need to go to 1/4 of an inch. And I always get asked, what's 1/4 inch? Actually, I had a student tell me this one time, which is awesome. They said it's about as thick as your pinky, which is accurate. So if you take your needle tool and measure your pinky like so, okay, that's about 1/4 of an inch. So if I take my needle tool, stick it into my clay, make sure your wheel's not spinning, don't damage the wheel head. One hand, not two, is gonna come down and grab a hold of that needle tool and pull it on out. So if I measure that up next to my pinky, you can see that I'm still quite a bit too big. Which is okay. I'd rather have too much than too little because I can always go down. I can't add clay back, so go slow, make sure you're measuring. We need this clay down here in order to create a foot on our pot, which you have to have a foot on every pot in my class if you expect to get a good grade on the assignment. Okay, so again, I went down a little further. I push that needle tool in. One hand comes down until it touches the clay. The pointer finger is going to touch the clay, and then I'm going to pinch my needle tool right there, pull it out. That's going to give me a measurement. The thickness of my pinky, that is 1/4 inch. That is what we want. Okay, now we got that little hole in there, just add a little pressure to it, smooth it out, okay? Just to get rid of that hole in the bottom. So I've entered, I've created an opening. It's kind of on an angle, which is gonna help me here when I go to open. I'm gonna take that pointer finger that I was just using and turn it over and make a hook, okay? With that hook, I'm gonna brace my hand or that finger too, and I'm gonna go full speed, curl that finger and pull it back into my lap. Even consistent pressure is key. And I only want to go as wide as a small sponge. So go slow here again to measure. You don't want to go too far. I'm going to stop my wheel, take my sponge, and I want it to be in the bottom, very bottom of the pot. Not up here on the rim or just inside the rim because that can give you a false reading. Set the sponge down in the bottom. It should fit just like that, okay? There should be almost no room. That's the perfect size for our 6-inch cylinder. So now we've entered and we've opened. Now we need to compress the bottom. We've pulled the bottom out and we've stretched those clay particles, making them weak. In order to fix that, we need to use our thumb to add pressure and smooth out that bottom so we don't get any cracking. If we don't do this step, we are going to get cracks, and it's really frustrating to spend all this time and end up with cracks in your pot. So use the side of your thumb, starting in the center, working out to 9 o'clock. Okay, we kind of just work back and forth, adding a little bit of pressure at a time. Don't go smushing all the way to the bottom of your wheel, you'll ruin your pot. A little bit of pressure. Smooth that out. So that's compression. We compress the bottom. Enter, open, compress the bottom. Now it's time to pull, okay? In order to pull, we need our sponge in our right hand. We're gonna pinch it between our thumb and our fingers here, just like so. We need some here to cover our fingers. Our left thumb is gonna touch the base of our right thumb. When we go to pull, and most things in ceramics, we wanna make sure our hands are connected. This is gonna create a symbiotic relationship here. These hands are gonna work together in order to do the process. I'm gonna lean onto my right arm. My left hand goes on the inside of the pot. My right hand goes on the outside with the sponge, okay? It's important to know that we always work at 3 o'clock. When we do this, we don't necessarily want to be here. It's possible, but we don't want to do this. We don't want to be up here at 12 or over on 9, okay? We always want to be working on the right-hand side of the wheel with the clay coming through our fingers. So our hands are connected. We're going to slow our wheel down from full speed to about half speed, okay? That's kind of dependent on your skill level and what's comfortable. And I'm going to push in with the sponge at the bottom, right at the wheel head. Okay, and it's going to create this little lip. Now our two hands have two different responsibilities. The sponge hand's responsibility is to push in and lift clay upward. Okay, the inside hand's responsibility is to keep the inside from getting any smaller. Okay, both hands come together and come up at the same time in order that the clay is forced upward and we have a consistent wall thickness. So now I've created that. I'm going to push in and pull up. We have to visualize as though there's a line right in the center. So if I stick this needle tool in there, there's a straight line in the middle of my pot. My sponge hand, my right hand, needs to push in and up towards the center throughout the entire pull if I want to create a vertical cylinder. So with that in mind, we're going to add pressure here. We're going to lift up, pushing towards the middle. As we get towards the top, we're going to ease off on our pressure and let off nice and easy. Don't pull through the top. Don't go and decide to leave a big old ring of clay at the top. Even consistent all the way to the top here. Okay, now we compress the bottom so we didn't get any cracks. We also need to compress our rim every time we pull. Super important if you get a little wobble in your rim to fix it. And even if you don't, just to make a strong rim, we're gonna pinch the rim softly. We're not actually grabbing it too hard. Pinch it between our pointer finger and our thumb, okay? Sponge is gonna push down on the rim. It's gonna wrap around the rim, and we're gonna hold steady here and make that rim go even, as well as we're gonna add a little pressure to the rim to create a compressed rim, making a stronger pot all around, okay? We're gonna repeat that process. Add pressure here at the wheel first, pushing in right at the wheel. Notice there's that clay right at the wheel is going inward, created that lip. I'm gonna lift that lip upward and towards the middle of the wheel. Easing off at the rim. Then what do I need to do? I need to compress the rim, pinch between our pointer finger and our thumb, add a little pressure on the rim, okay? And we're on our way up. Now, how high? 6 inches is the assignment, okay? If you want to get full credit on the assignment, you need to have at least a 6-inch cylinder. In order to reach that or to measure it, we're going to use our potter's knife. So from the potter's thumb to the start of the blade is going to be our 6-inch mark. Okay, so you can see I'm about 1.5 inches short here. So I'm going to repeat the process. Down to the bottom, adding pressure in at the very bottom of the wheel, lifting up, making sure that not close in the inside of the pot. Remember, that's my left hand's job. All the way to the rim, compressing my rim. Now, do not forget, now this clay is getting thinner as we pull it, and so because of that, we need to ease off on our pressure. If we have the same amount of pressure that we did when it was a 3-inch thick piece of clay as it is when it's a 1/4 inch, we're going to rip through it. So ease off on your pressure as you come up. Give that one more pull. We're looking for a wall thickness that is a 1/4 inch, all the way through with a slight taper from bottom to top. Compress my rim. Let's give it a measure. There we are. See, we're plenty over. Okay, this would meet the requirements for a 6-inch cylinder in our class. Now, we can't turn this in. This is not a finished product yet. This is not where it needs to be. We just got the height from the pulling. So we centered this clay. We pulled this clay to a 6-inch cylinder the size of our sponge. Now we need to get this thing off the wheel. In order to do so, there are some steps we need to follow, and they're very similar for every single project we make. First off, this stuff on the outside is called slurry. Okay, the slurry needs to come off in order that we can pick this pot up, as well as so it can dry evenly. So in order to remove that, we are going to use our metal rib, this guy right here, and we're gonna use the curved side in order to scrape up the side and remove that water. Don't go dipping this in water and adding water back to your pot, right? That's not the objective here. We wanna remove the water. So with a little bit of water on our hand, our left hand, we're gonna take this rib, and it's important the angle. We don't want to be flat with the pot or we're going to stick to it. We don't want to be pointed back at us or we're going to dig into it. So with that angle, it's important to make sure that it's about 90, maybe a little less, okay? Left hand goes on the inside directly across from it. I'm going to push in and come upward, removing that slurry, okay, just like so. I'm gonna scrape that off in our bucket. We're gonna go again. It's important anytime we're using ribs to have counter pressure here. We can use this to help straighten out any little imperfections. We're also compressing the clay, making it stronger, okay. Okay, so we removed that. Next, there's a bunch of water on the inside of my pot that I need to remove before I put it on a bat to be stored and dried. If I leave the water inside, I guarantee you're gonna crack your pot, okay? So in order to remove that, we're just gonna take our sponge, we're gonna lace it onto our needle tool in a way that it doesn't move, and we're going to make sure it doesn't stick out the end here. We're just gonna let the wheel spin as we do this. It's important to make sure that it spins, because if I hit the side of it, I want it to hit like evenly distribute that pressure. So don't just stick it in there without it spinning. Okay, soak up all that water. Might take a couple times, that's okay. Touch up my rim. Okay, now that's taken care of. There's one more step here before we can take this off the wheel, and it's this little skirt of clay down here. We're gonna have to trim a foot on this pot, and that skirt of clay, just that little bit there, is unneeded. We can trim that off later, but why waste the clay, and why go ahead and leave it there to create more work later? Take your potter's knife, use the blade of your potter's knife to follow down the pot and straight to the wheel. Okay, that's gonna remove that clay, just like so. Save that, you can recycle that. Now this pot is ready to be taken off the wheel. Okay, and before we take it off the wheel, we need a bat. Okay, these little pieces of fiberboard are called bats or wear boards. It's important we use this for manipulating clay or taking pots around the studio. Okay, I like to put mine right here on my bucket. You can also put it on your lap, whatever you need. Take your wire tool, make sure it's tight, pull straight back, thumbs down, pull straight back, cut that off. Make sure you control that. If you cut up through your pot, you just wasted a whole lot of time. So control your wire tool. Okay, the diamond grip, make 2 big old L's with your fingers, and then use the bladed part of that pointer finger to touch base here all the way to the bottom, thickest part of your pot. Tip it back towards you to break the seal, lift straight up, and set that right on your bat. Okay, notice there's no big old dents in there. I didn't have to squeeze my pot to pick it up. It was dry enough that just the tension between my fingers and the clay were allowing me to pick it up. Okay, so this is your 6-inch cylinder assignment. It still needs to be trimmed. It still needs to be bisque fired and glaze fired, but that is the throwing portion. Good luck, y'all. Let me know if you have any questions.